Day. I have a question today, and the person who is allowing me to answer this question actually posted it in our group. Hi, Linda. And they very kindly allowed me to answer it as a Facebook Live, and there will also be... Linda Walker is viewing your video now. Tap to invite her to join your video as a guest. Oh, hi Anne. Oh, this is this thing where Facebook Live are trying to be like Zoom. Only they're not quite like Zoom, and I tried all that and it was a pain. So go away, Facebook, and just realise your limitations or do it properly. And then I did the swipe thing and then I missed all your messages, so I'm not doing any of it. Anyway. So I'm going to read this question, but it is actually in the group, and there were a couple of answers, and I realised that people were not getting to the heart of what was actually really going on here. And I thought it's a good one because it's actually a question that I get asked a lot in my practice with clients. Haven't had anyone ask it yet through my elizabethroebuckjones.com/ask page. So I thought, I'm gonna ask, and I asked in the group and she didn't respond. So I messaged her and said, hey, can I answer this in the group? And can I use your material anonymously for the blog? And she said yes, and beautifully said, if it helps other people, then that's great. And that, I think, is just wonderful. And that is what our group is all about. So I am going to answer this question. I'll read it to you first so that you have it familiar in your mind, and then I will answer the question. And what I will do, obviously the Facebook Live will go up normally in the group, but in case it gets lost in the feed, I'll also copy the URL into the comments of the original question so that you can actually watch it there as well. And of course, eventually, and this one will go up on the 15th of November, which, as I've said to you, I know it's not ideal, and I'm working on addressing that so that those of you who are interested in working with me more closely will have the option of having a 12-month membership so that you can come into the back of the website and get access to these things a lot more quickly. Particularly a written answer if you ask me a question, and that we can perhaps do these questions using a different platform where you can talk to me live, which I think will be far more exciting. So it's all coming. Bear with me. It's just taking a little bit of time to get everything sorted. All right, I'm going to start, and I've called it, Why Is He So Boring? I'm excited to be in this group, and I need a ton of help. I am 47 years old, married for a year at age 23, ended a 5-year-long serious relationship 10 years ago. Both relationships ended as they cheated, and I can't live with that personally. I don't date much. I'm very confident, successful in my career, but opposite in my personal life. Recently, I met a very nice guy online. He's financially responsible, has a good relationship with his family, no children, never been married, not bad looking, seems to have his life in order. He seems to be very nice and a kind-hearted guy. Hi, Anne, and hi, Tamara. He said he doesn't date much either and has only had one serious relationship which lasted 5 years. Can I just say all this sounds really good? And I'll explain all of this in a minute. We've been on 3 dates, coffee, planetarium, and dinner. He plans the dates, picks up the bill and everything. He has manners, opens doors for me. You need to enjoy every bit of this, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a minute. Uses a handkerchief. I've got this vision of this really old soul. Doesn't say anything crude or rude, which is refreshing. The problem is he has no game. I hugged him goodbye on the 1st and 3rd date. I left the 2nd to him, and it was a semi-awkward verbal goodnight. Actually, something else has come to me, and can you all, girls all remember to say to me, Elizabeth, talk about that other thing at the end in case I forget? Something's just come to me also that I want to talk about. Because I believe the person that's written this letter's in the US, and there's something about how people are in the US I want to talk about. All right. I know he is taking it slow and not in a hurry, but I'm afraid it's going to get more awkward as we don't touch each other or anything. Not even a hand, not even a brush on the back or anything. I would like to keep seeing him, but frankly, it's not very exciting. I'm not opposed to stepping it up a little. I just don't want to be out of place. And I'm fully aware that I may not be sending the right signals. But I don't know what it is I'm doing wrong to change. Any suggestions? That handkerchief thing is gorgeous. Sarah, he sounds lovely. Oh, honey's here. Hello, darling. How are you? All right. Now, I'm wondering if my statement, why is he so boring, is describing exactly how you're feeling. Because you see, what can happen is when we go out with a guy who's very predictable, what he offers us is something very healthy. And to me, and the girls are commenting on this, he sounds lovely. And what he's offering you is something very predictable. He says what he means he'll say. He does, he means he does what he says he'll do. He takes you out on dates. He probably turns up right on time. He opens the car door. You get in the car. He treats you like a princess. You go out. You talk about things. Maybe you're having nice conversation and slowly stepping into maybe talking about some intimate stuff. Maybe not yet. You're only on the third date. But you see, the problem is, if we're not used to being in a relationship with someone who's healthy, when a healthy guy comes along, I was thinking the other day that this guy sounds like Mark Darcy from Roebuck-Jones. Jessica, I haven't read Roebuck-Jones. I've seen bits of the movie and I can't remember it. I've got the books and I just haven't had a chance to read them, and I really need to because I believe it's very, very good. Maybe he is. Look, but what can happen is that if you're used to being with guys who are unavailable, and guys who have affairs, they often present as very, very charming, very suave, very sophisticated. Often they present as Mr. Unavailable, and I'll tell you why. And you might not even pick it as you're picking this guy because he seems so available, and maybe he's even very sexually available, and the relationship gets raced along. But actually, a guy like that is unavailable. He's actually more unavailable than the guy that you're dating at the moment that you think is unavailable. And that's because you go along in the relationship, and while everything's going along fine, it's okay. But then what happens is, if the relationship moves into a space where things are difficult, a guy who has affairs chooses not to step into the relationship with you and ask you what's wrong and resolve things like a healthy guy would. A guy who has affairs decides to deal with his emotion by creating an escape in an affair. So actually, he's unavailable. And you've chosen two guys who've done this to you. And unavailable men keep us very emotionally busy. Healthy guys don't. And so what happens is you go into this anxiety wondering what the hell's going on because this guy's being so nice to you. And you think, what on earth? Why? And why isn't he racing me off to the bedroom? And why isn't he being, James Bond, an international man of mystery? Why isn't he doing that? And so you sort of start to think, well, gee, maybe he's a bit too boring for me. Or maybe he's a bit frigid. Or maybe he isn't, able to give me the kind of emotional engagement I want, when really what he's doing is building intimacy. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a minute, because when someone starts, hi Rebecca, when someone starts to build intimacy with us, it can be really, really scary. Okay. So where are we up to? Oh, yes. I've got notes here, and I know this stuff so well because I've been doing it for so long, I forget where I'm up to and I start talking. All right. So why do we maybe have a pattern where we choose the same kind of guys? And what you're saying to me is, I've chosen 2 guys that have left me and had affairs. And you've even said, my professional life is great and my personal life, I can't get it together. Okay, so this is where looking inside yourself, and you've said this, I don't know what to do. I know I need to look at me, but I don't know what to look at. And I would say to you, what you need to do is you need to go back into your childhood and you need to look for patterns. Because if you have had a parent, a mother or father, and many of us fall into this trap of saying, oh, but my boyfriend doesn't remind me of my father, so I know it's not my parents. It's not about reminding us of the person. It's not even about looking like the person. It's about creating the same emotional landscape. So if you've had a mother or a father who have been emotionally unavailable to you, or who have been a bit cryptic in the way they've spoken to you, who say things and you think, what does that mean? And then you have to think really hard to know what that means. Or maybe, and I'm not saying your parents haven't looked after you, and this is where you can get a little bit caught too, because you think, well, mum and dad were always there, and we had a really nice childhood, and they helped, they were, they always gave us everything we needed, and I never wanted for anything. That's the logistical care. Were mum and dad there for you emotionally? And I can say that myself, I probably wasn't there emotionally for my children growing up. And that's a lot to do with my own template of how I was in the world. And I think as I've evolved as a person and realised as I was growing up, even in my 30s, that I needed to do this hard work to understand myself, I think I'm probably more emotionally available to my children now that they're kind of in their late, early 20s than I ever was as children. But, parents do the best they can with what they've got. So it's very important, unless I'm not excusing parents who are overtly abusive or really harm you. Of course, I'm not excusing the behaviour. But I am saying parents do the best they can with what they've got. And that's very important to remember. We didn't have emotional support in my family. Well, there you are. If you're looking for patterns, that's a big one. So let's get back onto it. So what happens is we get really used to filling our mind from very young. From the moment we start kind of standing up and mum and dad talk to us and we can comprehend what they're saying, they're going to have the same interaction pattern. Unless they go through what I've been through, a massive metamorphosis and grow. They have the same interaction pattern. And that doesn't mean they don't care for you and they don't love you, but they express their love in a way they were taught. And so you find yourself maybe filling your mind. Mum might say something to you like, that'll be enough of that, young lady. What does that mean? She might say, if you do that again, there'll be consequences. And you go away thinking about it and thinking, what might the consequences be? What did mum mean? Oh gosh, I'd better be good. And you get used to having this way of being in the way that you love that impacts how you think. And so when you go out to choose a partner, hi Anna, how are you? When you go out to choose a partner, if that partner doesn't mimic how you're used to being loved, so they love you in a way that's very straightforward, and they take their time to get to know you, because it sounds like this guy, I really like him saying, I was in a stable, I've been one serious relationship which lasted 5 years. In this day and age, 5 years is a long time. Look, I don't know how old he is. I'm presuming he's similar age to you, but, it sounds to me like maybe he's had trouble finding the right person. I'll talk about that at the end. Maybe he has had trouble finding the right person. Maybe he has got stuff going on. We don't know. But at the moment, he's starting the relationship in a really healthy way. And if you're not used to that, it can really make you very anxious. And so we're there with this anxiety. What the hell is going on with this guy? You know, he's not being Mr. James Bond. Hi, Sally. You know, he's not Mr. He's not, an international man of mystery sweeping us off our feet. He's been plain and clear, and it's a bit hard to cope with. So we sit with this anxiety and we say, that's it, I'm bored. And often we end relationships with men that perhaps could give us the opportunity to experience love in a different way. All right. So, okay, so why do we do this? Why do we pick guys that replicate this emotional pattern from childhood? And why do we keep doing it when it's toxic? Well, we have this thing called our unconscious. And man, oh man, does it make sure it stays really unknown in our head. And it's a lot of effort to bring it into consciousness. And when we look inside ourselves, sometimes we see things we don't like. It's really, really hard. And that's why a lot of abusive men, like for those of you in Australia who watched Married at First Sight last night, saw Andrew sit there and say, I don't know. And the therapist said it to him again. What do you think you might have done that might have caused the collapse of this relationship? He said, I don't know. I can't really think. Because for him to look inside is way too hard. Way too hard. He can't go there. It's hard. I mean, I know it is very hard to go there with a therapist in a room full of people and on national television. But there also is that sense of having the ability to look at yourself, and some people just cannot do it at all. So, you need to look inside yourself and think about what those patterns might be, because what our unconscious does is it seeks to reproduce them. Because when we reproduce the emotional landscape with the person we fall in love with, what we create is an opportunity to resolve the unconscious grief we have with mum or dad who we feel weren't there emotionally for us or were emotionally confusing. And so, it's not about our partner looking like mum or dad or even acting like mum or dad. It's about the emotional landscape that they create. And so our unconscious says, this time they'll love us. This time they'll hear us. This time they'll respect us. This time they won't leave. And so you can find yourself in a relationship. You remember the arguing cycle I talk about all the time? And for those of you that are new to me, you need to go on my blog and read about it. You need to read my book, Stop Kissing Toads. And you need to go back through my Facebook Lives, and you need to watch those Facebook Lives and where I talk about the arguing cycle. Because we can find ourselves going around and around and around in the cycle with a toxic toad, repeating an unconscious pattern. And the trouble is we're asking someone who's incapable of giving us what we need, but we're caught in it. And because the pattern feels so familiar, because we've done it since we opened our eyes just about, it feels... I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Sarah, I'm going to talk about how you can resolve it. It feels so familiar. So even though it's toxic, we keep doing it because it feels familiar and it feels right. That's why we keep choosing the same kinds of guys that have the same kind of ending. So how can you resolve it? My book, Stop Kissing Toads, Pucker Up and Find Your Handsome Prince. I took 30,000 words to actually answer that question, and I'm still thinking of things I could have talked about in the book. So there may even be a second version. All right. So how do you resolve it? The first thing is you've got to identify what the pattern is. And I'm hoping to have some retreats here in Australia that are going to be focused exactly on that. Working out what your pattern is. Going right back through your childhood, working out how mum was in the world, how dad was, how that might have impacted on you, looking at previous relationships, looking at the patterns that have happened in order to dig down into those unconscious patterns that you keep repeating, and then once you recognize them, they come right up into consciousness. Then it's about saying, when I meet a nice guy, like this guy that you're describing, I feel myself feeling anxious, rather than saying to yourself, that's it, he's boring, and getting rid of him, sitting with it and saying to yourself, I'm going to give myself a chance to experience this relationship in a different way. Now, of course, if you are sitting with him and there is absolutely no sexual attraction and spark, I am not saying that you stay with someone just because, but I am saying that if there is that little bit of spark there and you're sitting there thinking, man, oh man, this relationship, man, oh man, it's so different to anything I've ever done before. Gee, he treats me with respect. Gee, he's nice. That you just hang in there a little bit longer. And I would encourage you that when you read Stop Kissing Toads and you work with me, that you get your head around all those indicators that you can see right from the very first date as to whether a guy is toxic or not. And you listen to those indicators and you say to yourself, you know what? Am I seeing these things that indicate that this guy isn't very nice? And I'm quite sure that if you educate yourself with understanding those indicators, that if you look back on your previous relationships, you'll say, oh, there was this, and this he did right at the beginning, and I should have seen it. But I didn't, because we don't get educated about relationships. And we should be. And we don't. We kind of learn it as we go, or lucky people come into my group and learn it. So that is the important thing you need to do to resolve it. And you know what? When I talk about it, it sounds really easy, but actually it is incredibly difficult to do. Incredibly difficult, because you're going to have to sit with your anxiety with somebody that's presenting to you in a very different way. All right? The thing that you will find that you can link into, and I talk a lot about this in my book, is this sense of overfunctioning. So when you are in a relationship, whether it's a relationship, a child-parent relationship, a brother-sister relationship, or even a friend that's toxic, what you can find yourself doing is filling your mind, worrying about the other person, what they mean, what they're doing, whether they love you, all that stuff. Yeah, no, Sarah, it's not easy. All that stuff. And we get very used to doing it. And actually, we can get caught in doing it because nobody wants to think about themselves. It's too hard. You see shit you don't like about yourself. And it's really hard because there's times in our life when we look back when we've done some really effing stupid things. And you think, oh my God, I'm so stupid. And then that activates your inner critic. So it's not easy. And of course, I've got a lot of work coming on inner critic. It's going to be, I think, a fixed course on my page so that all of you can access it no matter what time zone you're in. And I'll be on video chatting to you and that kind of thing. And you can do some work on your inner critic on your own. And we'll probably have a closed group where you can come in and talk as well and post questions and things like that. So all these things are coming. It's funny, I've been doing this online for a long time, but I didn't quite get the formula right. And it was only early last November that everything started really going. And our group has tripled in size and it's just been crazy. So just bear with me. I'm working very hard behind the scenes to get things done. So just please bear with me. It is coming. So it's really important that you can sit with that and say, what am I doing? And in my book, Stop Kissing Toads, it'll even tell you words and phrases you might be saying and behaviours you might be doing that'll help you link into whether you're over-functioning or not. And if you are doing that, you need to be mindful that that is a sign that you are in a space where you could be not managing yourself well and seeking out those old toxic patterns rather than staying with someone that offers you something healthy. The benefit of if you can stay in a healthy relationship, as I have discovered in my life, I actually experienced this when I was young, and I don't know, but I don't know. I don't know whether I was born with emotional intelligence. I don't know what it was, but I had a bit of a yuck upbringing, and we don't know why some people repeat things and some people don't, but I went into the rebel space. There's Collude, Copy, Rebel. I went into the Rebel space and I met my husband who, look, he's not perfect. No one's perfect, but he did offer me a healthy relationship. And I went through all of this and I just kept sitting with it because I watched my mum and I watched the choices she made. And I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to stick with this. I'm just going to stick with it. I'm just going to stick with it. And one of the benefits of being with someone that offers you a healthy relationship is that, you know, in a healthy relationship, a little bit each rubs off against the other. And if you keep doing your personal development, it puts you in a space where you can have some healing, you know, because you're not being offered that continual toxic dance. Yeah? So that is how you get well again. So it's interrupting the patterns about you and making a conscious choice to be in the world differently. Incredibly important. Now, I think I've talked about my book. I would strongly recommend my book for you. It's on my website. It's $20 Australian. I think it's about $15.50 American. It's not expensive. The postage off my site is, though. It's about the same amount in postage for you to get a signed copy from me and a Freddo frog. Because I'm now going to start sending Freddo frogs with my books. But if you go online, it's on the Book Depository, it's on Barnes & Noble, it's on a whole lot of international book sites, and you can get the book a lot cheaper. I think it was on special on Barnes & Noble for cheaper than that. It was on special on one of the book sites. So look, I'd encourage you to shop around. On my website, in the description, are all the links to where I've found that it's listed. And in about 4 or 5 weeks, it's going to be an ebook, which will make it even cheaper. But I'm still waiting for them to get it all organised.